We're going to play this one more time for anyone.
I've lived in my home for 20 years. With the recent recession, the value of my home has decreased considerably. Why do my property taxes go up when the value of my home goes down?
Schools may account for over 60% of your property tax bill. The library, park district, local township, Cook County government, water reclamation district, or some of the other taxing bodies that you pay. Each year, these taxing bodies have a levy meeting where they decide how much money they'll need for future operations. By law, the levy can only be raised 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less. Typically, the average increase is in the neighborhood of 3%. Let's say the high school board believes the levy increase won't be enough to cover the cost of new computers for the student library, and determine an extra 8% levy is needed.
A referendum is a request for additional money that is over and above what is allowed to ask by law. So the high school's request for additional money is placed on the ballot during an election for the public to vote on. You may say, okay, they passed the referendum. We pay an extra 11% that year. But it's not just an extra 11% that year, it's an extra 11% going forward. Because once it's raised at the 11%, the following year when the high school has its levy meeting, they may raise it another 3%. It's 3% on top of the 11%. So what you have is a steadily rising demand for taxes, and that demand has to be met. And in most cases, the same property owners from one year to the next having to meet that demand. So you can see how you can end up paying more even when the value of the property is going down.
Let's talk about the second reason why taxes go up when your property value goes down. There are 102 counties in Illinois. All counties, except for Cook, assess residential and commercial property at the same rate. In Cook County, residential property is assessed 10% of value, and commercial property is assessed at 25% value. Businesses pay 2.5 times more than residents. When a business closes, who pays the gap in revenue? When a business on a large property, responsible for millions in taxes, closes its doors, you've got a lot less revenue because the vacant building's assessment is reduced significantly. Therefore, everybody, residents and other business owners alike, have to fill the gap left by vacant properties. Here is the third reason your tax bill may have increased. If you received an exemption one year, but didn't receive it the next, you can end up paying more. Check your second installment bill in July to confirm. If you are not receiving exemptions you are entitled to, such as homeowners or the senior exemption, call the Cook County Assessor's Office. You can file a certificate of error to receive a refund.
I hope you found this explanation on why your property taxes go up when the value of your home goes down helpful. It's important to keep in mind that taxing bodies will get what they are asking for. Revenue must be met. If your taxes go down, someone else's will go up to meet revenue demand. I know no one likes hearing it, but at least you know a little bit more about why things are happening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Yonker. I'm a trustee for the Village of Tinley Park. The mayor had a previous engagement and couldn't be here tonight. I just wanted to welcome everyone here tonight to come to the property tax assessment seminar given by Commissioner Dan Patlak. And at this time, without further ado, I'll have him come up here. He's been a friend of mine, and he'll help you through the process.
Thanks,
Dan,
Brian. Appreciate
thanks.
it. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My goal today for you is that when you walk out of here, you're going to know a lot more about putting together the most effective appeal at the Board of Review that you possibly can. And I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. I used to work as an analyst. Before I was a commissioner, I worked as an analyst for a previous commissioner by the name of Maureen Murphy. I don't know if anyone remembers her, but she was out of Evergreen Park, and she did a really good job. And she did a lot of these seminars. And she was doing so many of them that eventually she started asking for help, and I started filling in for her. And what I figured out was that no matter where I was in the district, and it's a really big district, which I'll show you a map of it later on. But no matter where I was, whether it was in Tinley Park or Orland Park or Palos Park, or Park Ridge or Arlington Heights, same questions over and over again. So I'm going to try to answer your questions before you ask them. And then at the end of the night, if you've still got more questions, I will stand up here and try to answer them for you. I brought some staff members, some analysts from the Board of Review, and they will be here to help you with the questions as well. So I mentioned I was an analyst at the Board of Review, and when I was working there, I started in 1999 and worked through 2006. I ran across a cartoon, and I cut it out. I thought it was pretty funny. As a guy working in the property assessment appeal system. So I'm going to try to take that maze and turn it more into a straight line for you, okay? And at the end of the night, if I haven't done that, I'll try to answer more questions or at least give you some resources as to where to go to get some of your answers. So I want to start out by explaining something. And it's something that comes up at every seminar, and that's the difference between my office and the Cook County Assessor's Office. So to start with, the Board of Review is not the Cook County Assessor. Two completely separate offices, both county offices, but separate offices. So the Cook County Assessor right now is a gentleman by the name of Joe Barrios. Anybody heard of Joe Barrios before? A few people? Okay. So Joe is the Cook County Assessor. He runs the Assessor's Office. They have offices at 118 North Clark Street, the county building. Their offices are on the 3rd floor and the 9th floor, and their main job is to assess all property in Cook County. And they have some sidelines. One is they're in charge of administering all exemptions, so if you want to get homeowner exemption, senior freeze, you fill out a form and it all goes to the Cook County Assessor. They also have another sideline, they do appeals. So some of you earlier this year may have filed an appeal with the Cook County Assessor. You may have gotten a reduction, you may not have gotten a reduction. Whatever the story was, that's over with. So the time period for filing an appeal with the Cook County Assessor has expired. The time period for filing an appeal at my office, the Cook County Board of Review, has begun, but it will expire on September 18th. So you've got to get your appeal into us no later than September 18th. Board of Review, where I'm at, our main job is reviewing property assessment appeals from aggrieved property owners who think their assessment is too high. That's the main thing we do. We have a few other minor things which I'm not going to go into, but that's our calling right now. Now there's a third office that I want to take a moment to talk about, and that's the Township Assessor. So every township in Cook County, suburban Cook County, has a Township Assessor. They don't assess property. In Cook County, Township Assessors don't assess. They do other things. Like, for instance, if you need to get a exemption, they've got the forms and they know the proper way to fill them out and they can help you with that. Or if you want to file an appeal with the Cook County Assessor or with the Board of Review, they know how it's done. They have the forms, they have information, they know how to help you file online if you want to do it that way. And they do a bunch of other things which I won't go into, but bottom line is your Township Assessor really is your taxpayer advocate. They're your local government that's close to you that you can go to and ask for help. And so with that, I want to take a moment and introduce Willie Jones, who's in the back of the room, but he's going to come up here. And Willie is the Bremen Township Assessor. And if there's someone that's here tonight, you're not from Bremen Township, that's okay. If you would want to get help, you would want to go to your Township Assessor in Orland or Palos or wherever you might be. But Willie, you want to tell us a little bit about your office, your hours of operation?
Good evening, how's everyone? As Dan said, how many of y'all like going downtown to Cook County? Nobody? Okay. That's one of the reasons my office is located in the township. My office is at 16361 Kenzie Parkway. It's a small building right between the Cook County Courthouse and the Markham Courthouse in Markham. So if you ever want any of the services that you're talking about tonight, we can take care of those services for you, and we relay that information down to Cook County for you. That's our job, is to be here locally for you, so you don't have to go to the quagmire going downtown to Cook County. We can file appeals for you. We can help you with all of the exemptions and everything Dan talked about. We can do that for you. Our office now is available for this appeal period through the 18th of September. We're open from 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday. You don't need an appointment, just show up. We also have special hours on the next two Saturdays, from 9 to 12. You can come in on Saturday if you're not able and file your appeal as well and get any information. We have the ability to also help you with comparable properties. So please utilize our services. We're there for you, and anything we can do to help you, we're here to help you.
And Willie, can you give everyone your phone number in case they want to call?
708-333-1951.
Okay.
333-1951.
Thanks, Willie.
Okay.
The next two Saturdays.
The next two Saturdays,
And 9 to 12.
9 to 12. Okay.
So I mentioned earlier that I'm sort of accustomed to the same questions over and over again. And the first question is, why should I file an appeal? And there are many reasons, but let me give you several good reasons. The first reason is it doesn't cost anything. There's no charge for filing an appeal at the Board of Review, so you don't have to write us a check or anything like that. It's free. The only cost to you is whatever work you might put into looking up the information to present to us to show us that in fact you are overassessed. Now, of course, you do have the right, if you so choose, to hire an attorney to represent you. And there are attorneys who specialize in property assessment appeals representing property owners, whether residential or commercial property. So if you want to hire an attorney, you can. The benefit of hiring an attorney is that you don't have to do any work. You just sign your name, they take care of it for you, and then hopefully down several months from now, you get a letter in the mail from our office saying we're granting a reduction. The downside, though, of course, is that they're going to expect to get paid. So it's going to cost you some money. And I would suggest that because you're here today listening to me talk about how to file an appeal, and because you have a resource in Willie Jones's office, unless you have a particularly complex case, you really don't need to hire an attorney. It's something that can make your life easier. Like I said, you don't have to do any work then, but otherwise, hopefully at the end of this presentation, you're going to feel like you've got the resources to go out and file it on your own and not have to pay for representation. So next reason for filing an appeal, you got a pretty good chance to get a reduction. The first year I worked as an analyst at the Board of Review, it was 1999, 54% of all the appeals at the Board of Review got a reduction. Now, of course, some of those reductions were small, some were large, but 54%, not bad. Now, that number changes every year. So I've seen the number go as low as 49%. One year, I think 4 or 5 years ago, the number went up to 73%. But whatever the number is, that's not a bad range. And again, the fact that you're here listening to me tell you how to do this, I think gives you a better chance to get a reduction than, let's say, that someone who files an appeal on their own without anyone's help and without any instruction. They're sort of going in blind, and when you do it, you're going to be going in with a lot of knowledge at your disposal. Next reason for an appeal, a chance for multi-year savings. So the Cook County assessor reassesses 1/3 of Cook County every year. Last year in 2017, he reassessed the south suburbs where you all live. The tax bill that was a result, or that showed the fallout from that reassessment came this past July 1st. That was your second installment bill. It was the yellow bill, and any increase you got in your assessment would have been reflected in that bill. Any decrease in the assessment would have been reflected in that bill, and any result you might have gotten if you filed an appeal at my office last year would have been evident from that bill. Okay? So if you had filed an appeal at my office in 2017 and received a reduction, that reduction would have been good for 2017, but it also would have been good for this year, 2018, and then next year, 2019, until you were then reassessed again in 2020. So in other words, you file an appeal at my office in the first year after the reassessment, potentially you get 3 years worth of savings. Now, I say potentially because most of the time, once we make a decision, the Cook County Assessor respects that decision until the next triennial reassessment period. Occasionally, he has a big difference of opinion with us, and he will switch it back the following year. Not usually the case, but it can happen. Now we're in 2018, so if you file an appeal this year and you get a reduction, it's good for 18 and 19. If you don't file or you don't get a reduction this year, you file in 19, it'll be good only for 19 till you get reassessed in 2020. So potentially you file one appeal, but you can get multiple years savings. Now, by the way, if you did file last year and you didn't get a reduction, I encourage you, if you think you're overassessed, to try us again. Things aren't necessarily the same this year as they were last year, and you may have better luck. If you got a reduction, so you're at, and that reduction stuck for this year, maybe the real estate market went down. Homes aren't worth as much. Or maybe since that time, other people have gotten a reduction for their homes, and their homes are maybe like yours, and those are now new comparables for you to use that maybe didn't exist when you filed your appeal last year. So you can file your appeal at the Board of Review once each year if you choose to do so. You can also file an appeal once each year at the Cook County Assessor's Office if you'd like to do that. All right, so last reason for appeal. Let us suppose that you file your appeal at the Board of Review. You're convinced that you're overassessed. You turn in a bunch of evidence. We look at the evidence, and we determine that, in fact, you are not overassessed. You're confused, and you're actually underassessed. We won't raise your assessment. So you don't have to worry about something bad happening if you file an appeal at the Board of Review. And if you turn in information, let's say about your next door neighbor, because their house is just like yours, but their assessment is much lower, if we determine that they're underassessed, we're not going to raise your neighbor either. So you can't get yourself in trouble, and you can't get your neighbor in trouble. So no problem with filing an appeal. Okay, next question. How do I know if I'm overassessed? So there are a variety of reasons upon which someone might file an appeal at the Board of Review. And I'm going to talk about several of them. The number one reason for residential property owners filing an appeal at the Board of Review is called lack of uniformity. And all that really means is that your house, compared to other similar homes in your area, is assessed higher. So I'm going to give you a detailed explanation on how that works. And so let's start by talking about this term uniformity, okay? Because different people might interpret it differently. But I want you to know how we're looking at it, because that's really what's important in terms of what you're going to turn in for your evidence. So as far as uniformity is concerned, we're looking at 6 major things. Thing number 1 is the property classification. So in Cook County, all property is classified. Vacant properties, class 1. Residential properties, class 2. Commercial apartment building is 7 units or more, class 3. Other commercial property is class 5A. Industrial property, class 5B. Within class 2 residential, there are sub-classifications. Class 202, 203, 204, so on and so forth. 299 is a condo. By the way, if you have a condo, what I'm going to talk about right now does not apply to condos. Condos are actually pretty simple, and it's not nearly as complex as doing it for the rest of the residential property. So when we're done here, if you have a question about condos, happy to answer it, but really, it doesn't take much work on your part as a condo owner. We really just need you to file an appeal if you think you're over-assessed. So anyways, I'm going to answer questions at the end.
Oh, okay.
So, classification. So if you've got a class 203, we want you to compare to other class 203s. If you've got a 234, which is a bi-level, compare to other class 234s. If you've got a class 209, which is 5,000 square feet or more, compare to other class 209. So stay within your class when you're making your comparisons. Next is neighborhood. So the Cook County Assessor divides every township into neighborhoods. The neighborhoods are all different shapes and sizes, and they're all assigned a neighborhood code, which is a number, okay? So your neighborhood could be number 1, or it could be number 58, or it could be number 111. Whatever number neighborhood your house is in, we want you to compare it to other homes that are also in that same numbered neighborhood. The only exception is if you have such a unique home that there are no other homes like yours in your neighborhood, in which case you'd want to go out to the next closest neighborhood, or the next neighborhood that is most like your neighborhood. But that's really the exception to the rule. If you run across that situation, make sure you write us a note and tell us, hey, I did an exhaustive search. There's no other homes like mine in my neighborhood, so I had to go to this other neighborhood, which is nearby or which is like mine. Next is age. If you got a 50-year-old home, try to compare your house to other 50-year-old homes, or 45-year-old homes, or 55-year-old homes. In other words, try to stay close in age if you can. We're going to give more weight to those comparable properties that are closer in age to your house, as opposed to those that are farther away in age. If you got a 50-year-old home, don't compare it to a 100-year-old home. That's not a good comparison. Don't do it. It's not going to help. Next is construction style. So as far as the assessor is concerned, there's 4 construction styles. There's brick, which is the same as masonry, brick and frame, and stucco. If you've got a brick home, we would like it if you would compare it to other brick homes. If you got a frame home, we'd like it if you compare it to other frame homes. Now, if you got a brick house and there's another home just like yours at the end of the block, but it's brick and frame, you can use that as a comparable. We're not going to throw that out. We'll look at it. We might make an adjustment on our end based on what we think the difference is between brick and frame and a frame. You can use it. However, my advice to you is if you've got good comparables that are of the same construction style, those are better than good comparables that are of a different construction style. So again, try to stay uniform if you can, if that helps you make your case. Next is square footage. So the most common type of property in Cook County for residential is a class 203. The definition of a class 203 is less than 2 stories and between 1,000 and 1,800 square feet. So if you have a class 203 home and it's 1,200 square feet, ideally, you're going to give us comparable properties that are also 1,200 square feet, or 1,100, or 1,300. Closer, better than farther away. Now, could you give us comparables that are 1,700 or 1,800 square feet, still the same class? Yeah, sure, and we'll definitely consider them. However, we're going to give more weight to those properties that are closer in square footage than those properties that are farther away in square footage. Same goes for proximity. So I told you we want you to give us comparable properties that are in the same neighborhood code, but a neighborhood could be several miles long or wide. And you could give us a comparable that is a mile away. We'll certainly consider it, but we would much rather have you give us comparable properties that are on your block, or on the block that's across the street, or 1 or 2 or 3 blocks away. We're going to give more weight to those comparable properties than we are to those properties that are a mile, or a mile and a half, or 2 miles away. So, rule of thumb, start looking for comparable properties that are on your own block. If you can't find any that make your case, then move out a little bit, maybe in concentric circles. Try to give us comparable properties that are closer rather than farther away. All right, so that's uniformity. But once you've found homes that are uniform to your home, how do you determine whether or not they're assessed higher or lower than your house? Because it's not just based on the overall assessment, okay? I'm going to give you a formula to use. It's a simple formula, and it's in the booklets that we handed to you. So let's suppose that you have a class 203 home. And let us suppose that the assessment on that home is $25,000, and that the building square footage is 1,500, okay? So your total assessment, $25,000, building square footage, 1,500. So right here. So what you need to know to start with is that your assessment's broken into two parts. You got the land assessment and you got the building assessment. So total of this assessment is $25,000. Then you got your building square footage, 1,500. What you want to figure out, what you want to calculate is the assessment per square foot of living area for your home. To do that, you take the building assessment, 15,000, you divide it by the building square footage, 1,500. If you divide 15,000 by 1,500, what do you get? What do you get? That's the lady that didn't want to be called. Okay, anyone, come on, someone take it. Yeah, hey, excellent. So the answer is $10 a square foot. So if that's my house, I know I'm assessed at $10 a square foot. So the next question is, what are the other houses assessed at that are like mine? Okay? And if you do your homework and you find that the other homes are at $9.50 and $10 and $10.50 and $11 and $12, then you know you're probably pretty fairly assessed based on uniformity. But if you find a pattern of homes that are at $9 and $8 and $7 and $6 a square foot, then that's your evidence that you want to turn in to the Board of Review, showing us that there is a lack of uniformity. So, next question is, where do I go to get this information? You can go to the Cook County Assessor's website, cookcountyassessor.com, and it's in the booklet. By the way, in that booklet, we've got website addresses for a bunch of different places. They're all really good. If you want to learn more after you're done with this seminar, check out the websites, like the Assessor's website, and click on all the drop-down menus, and you can really learn a lot. You can really increase your knowledge significantly. So what I would suggest, though, is go to the Cook County Assessor's website and go to search, okay? And when you do that, you're going to get this, property search, and there's going to be 6 different ways you can do a search. The first thing you want to do is look up your own property. And the best way to do that is to click on property pin search. When you do that, it'll ask you for the property index number for your property, which you can find at the top of your property tax bill. When you put that number in, what you're going to get is a printout of information about your property along with a photograph of your property. And in that information will be your neighborhood code, your property classification, your assessment broken down by land and building. It'll say what your property, what the construction style is, the square footage, all that stuff I was just talking about will all be in that printout. What I would suggest is, once you've got that information, do that calculation I told you about. Determine what the assessment is per square foot of living area for your property, and then print out the page that you see on your screen and write on it the assessment per square foot of living area. Then I'd also like to suggest to you that you take that page and you download it into a file in your computer that you're going to call Board of Review Evidence. Okay, and I'll tell you later what you're going to do with that, but download that in there, okay? So now you've looked up your property. Then the next thing you want to do is do a search for other properties that are like yours. And the best way to do that, well actually there's 2 good ways. So way number 1 is you can go to Willie Jones's office and bring in your property index number. They will pull up a list of properties that are like yours. They've got a good database, which has the same information as the assessor's website, except it's organized a little bit differently. And what they can actually do is pull up comparable properties in order of their assessment per square foot. So they can give you the ones that are high at the top and low at the bottom, and you can see exactly where yours falls compared to the other properties. And so if there's 50 like yours, and yours is 10th from the lowest, you might say to yourself at that point, I'm doing pretty good, I don't need to continue. But if yours is 10th from the top, what you might say to yourself is, I potentially have 40 comparable properties that I can use. What you'd want to do at that point is look at the ones that are close to you, that are similar, Their office can print out the full printout. You can see the details of each property. You can decide which ones you want to use as your comparable properties to submit to the board of review. So that's one way. You can go, you can get help from the township assessor. I'm here because I want to empower you so that you can do this yourself. So you don't have to depend on the government to do it for you, and so you have a full knowledge. Because a lot of people will just walk in there and they'll get the information, they won't understand it. And I think it's important that you understand how this works when you're fighting for your rights. So in any case, if you want to do it yourself, you go here, you go to neighborhood search. And when you click neighborhood search, you're going to get this. And basically, it's just a query. It's a very simple query. And what you're going to do is go to township and hit the drop-down menu, and it'll give a list of townships. You're going to choose the township you live in. Most of you are Bremen Township, so you'll choose Bremen Township. Then you're going to pick neighborhood. Now, you're going to know the neighborhood to pick because you've already looked up your property. So you're going to know that you're in neighborhood number 56 or 48 or whatever it is, and you're going to choose the appropriate neighborhood. Then you're going to go to property class. You're going to hit the drop-down menu. It'll give you every residential property class, and next to each one where they have the number 202, 203, it'll actually have the definition of what that property class is. You're going to choose your property class, and you're going to know that because, again, you looked up your property already. So once you've made your three choices, you're going to click, hit this button, search, and it's going to pull up for you it's going to pull up for you a page that looks like this. Okay? There's just some basic information here, and this is what I suggest you do. Now, by the way, depending on the type of property you have and the location, you might get 5 comparables, you might get 200. There's just no way to tell. But it'll look like this when you pull it up, and there could be multiple pages. In any case, there's 2 important things to look at, the assessed value and the address. So if I was the Cook County assessor, which I am not, I would have this organized a little bit differently. I would break down assessed value between land and building. Unfortunately, they don't do that. So my suggestion is simply look at the assessed value and look for ones that seem like they're high. Now, it's not a pure test because you don't know what part is land, what part is building, but it's a general guide. So look for the ones that seem high. Then go to the address and look for the addresses that are close, the ones on your block, on your street, nearby, okay? And then just start clicking them. Over here is the PIN number, and this is the live link. So when you decide to choose one and you click on it, what you're going to get is exactly what you got when you looked up your individual property, except you're going to get that information for the particular comparable property that you're looking at. So it's going to look like this, okay? There's going to be a photograph, other information, and by the way, there's a lot more information, we just are not showing it on the screen. So take a look at the photo. Does it look like my property a little bit? It doesn't have to be exact. It does not have to be exact. Look at the square footage, look at the construction style, look at the age, other important information. If it seems to generally match up with your property, then do that calculation I told you about. And when you do the calculation, if your property is $10 a square foot and this property is at 11, you don't want to use it because it's higher per square foot. That's not a comparable property that's going to help you get a reduction, okay? But if it's at 9 or 8 or 7 or 6, then what I would suggest you do is print it out, write down on there the assessment per square foot, then download it into that file in your hard drive that I told you should name Board of Review Evidence. And again, I'll tell you in a little bit what to do with that, okay? So go through the process as many times as you want to. You may come to the conclusion that you're fairly assessed. But if you find that there are a pattern of homes where they're assessed less per square foot, that's the evidence that you want to use to show that there is a lack of uniformity. Okay. All right, so that's the basics of how to do a lack of uniformity appeal. I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about exactly how to file the appeal. But I want to talk about some other reasons for appealing. So the next one is a recent purchase. Has anybody here purchased their home in the last 3 years? Okay, just a few people. All right, so I'm going to talk about this for your benefit, but also everybody else can tell their friends and neighbors that they know that it recently purchased in the last 3 years. So the Cook County assessor places a market value on every property. And from that market value is derived the assessment. So market value is MV, market value. The assessed value is AV, assessed value. The assessed value is 10% of the market value because residential property in Cook County is assessed at 10% of its value. Keep in mind, you saw the video, commercial industrial properties at 25% of its value. So let us say that the Cook County assessor has a market value on your home of $300,000. That means the assessed value would be 10% of that, $30,000. Now let us also say that you bought your house a year and a half ago, and you bought it for $250,000. We can take your purchase price and use that to help us determine what the assessed value ought to be for that property. So the way it would work is this. You're currently assessed at $300,000, or your market value is $300,000, the assessment's $30,000. You bought for $250,000. What we can do is take the $250,000 purchase price, multiply it by the statutory assessment rate of 10%, and we can bring your assessment down from $30,000 to $25,000. Okay? So long as it was an arm's length transaction, meaning that the purchase was not a foreclosure, not a short sale, and not between relatives. The evidence that you need to turn into us is your closing statement and an affidavit, which does not need to be notarized, but it needs to be signed by you, the property owner, that this is a arm's length transaction, not a foreclosure, not a short sale, not between relatives. That's sufficient for us to use the purchase price to bring the reduction. Now, by the way, if you purchase that home for $350,000, you wouldn't want to use recent purchase as a reason for filing an appeal. Okay? However, I will tell you, if we find out that you purchased it for $350,000, we won't use that purchase price against you. So we're not going to raise you because of it. We're not going to not give you a reduction because of it. You could still file based on lack of uniformity or any of the other reasons I'm going to give you as a reason for a reduction, and we can grant it despite the purchase price perhaps being higher than the market value that the assessor has placed on the property. So that's recent purchase. Okay, next reason for appeal, market value. So let us say once again that the assessor says your house is worth $300,000. But you've been living in your neighborhood for 10 years, you followed the market, and you know for sure that there's no way your house is worth $300,000. As a matter of fact, you have sent a letter to the assessor saying, I would like to sell my house to the county for $300,000 because I know I can't sell to anybody else for that, right? I mentioned that because people tell me that all the time. So, anyways, what you can do is, if that's the case, you can file a market value appeal. Now the thing is, you got to give us evidence for that. You can't just say, well, they're wrong, my house isn't worth $300,000. You got to give us evidence showing what your house is worth. So two good types of evidence. One type, an appraisal. Maybe you have an appraisal because you did a refinance recently, or you took out a line of credit, or maybe you just want to pay for an appraisal because you think it's worth it. If you give us an appraisal, we consider that to be expert testimony, and we often will use the number or the amount that the appraiser came up with to determine value. However, I will tell you, we won't automatically use his value. We will evaluate the appraisal. We're going to look at the comparables the appraiser used. We're going to look at the adjustments that he made. If we think he did a good job, we'll use this number. If we think he was off by a little bit, we'll use a little bit different number. If we think he just came up with this number to help you, we may not use it at all. Now, not everybody has an appraisal available. Not everybody wants to pay for one. So if that's the case, you can still file a market value appeal, but then we want you to give us comparable properties that have sold in the last year, year and a half for less than what the assessor says your house is worth. Okay? So where do you get that information? Local realtor. Local realtor belongs to the multiple listing service. He can pull up that information. You can get a photograph with a description of the property, the date of the sale price, and other information about the property, and you can turn those in as comparable properties. Now, we will look at short sales and foreclosures, but we're going to give more weight to arm's length transactions. So if you're going to give us 10 comparable properties, better to give us 7 arm's length transactions and 3 short sales than 7 short sales and 3 arm's length transactions, okay? Focus in on the arm's length transactions to help you. But in any case, if you want to file a market value appeal, you can do that using that type of information. All right, next reason for appeal, a factual error in the description of the property. So the Cook County Assessor has all kinds of data on your home. The number of bedrooms and bathrooms, whether or not you've got a basement, is it partial or full, is it finished or unfinished, do you have a garage, is it a one-car, two-car, attached, detached, is there a side drive, what's the age, do you have air conditioning, is there a fireplace, what kind of roof do you have, all kinds of stuff. For our purposes at the Board of Review, the most important error that the assessor can make in the description of your property is on the living square footage of your property, because if your house is in fact 1,000 square feet of living area, but the assessor says it's 1,500 square feet, that means you're probably over-assessed on the building portion of your assessment by about 50%. And that is going to dramatically affect your property tax bill. So if you've got a situation like that, you can come to us and you can say, hey, the assessor says I'm at 1,500, but I'm really 1,000. You know, make the adjustment and give me a break. So again on this, you have to give us evidence. You can't just take your word for it. You know, occasionally we have people that will send in a drawing of their house and say, look and see, it's not that big, but we can't take that as expert testimony. We need better evidence. So what would be good evidence? Plan a survey. If you've got a fairly simple home, like you know, a one-story ranch, we can look at the plan of survey, we can say length times width equals total living square footage, that's good evidence. Or if it's a simple two-story, we can take length times width times 2. So a plan of survey in that case would be good. However, oftentimes a plan of survey is not sufficient, because not every house is that simple. They have different shaped roofs, they have rooms sticking out, different things like that. Some rooms that don't count as square footage. So a plan of survey by itself is not always sufficient. So what else? An appraisal. If you've got appraisal, it always lists the living square footage. There's often a drawing that gives the footprint of the house that helps us determine the square footage, and that's very helpful as well. What else? Architect's drawings. Architect's drawing can be very helpful. I will tell you, as a person that used to be an analyst at the board, looking at lots of different architect's drawings, some are great, they're really easy to figure out, some are just impossible. You need to determine yourself, if you're going to turn it into us, are we going to be able to figure out what it is, okay? So what I would do before I turn in my evidence for something like this is ask yourself the question. First of all, you got to say, the people that are going to be reviewing my evidence have never seen my home and they'll never see it. Is the evidence on its own compelling enough and understandable enough to convince the analyst that the assessor's wrong and what I'm saying is right? Now, if the answer is yes, you're in good shape. If you're not sure, I would suggest getting other evidence or doing some work to clarify whatever it is that you're going to give to us. Now also, if you can get a state licensed certified architect to come and inspect and measure your home, write us a letter on his letterhead with his seal, testifying to what the living square footage is, we would consider that to be expert testimony. Photographs sometimes of the exterior or interior of the home can also be helpful to us in determining what is the living square footage of the home. Now, some of you are probably wondering, well, exactly how do you measure it? So this is how you do it. You measure from the outside dimensions, so it includes everything inside the home. It includes the walls, the hallways, the closets, the bathrooms, and all the regular rooms, but with a few exceptions. So does not include a basement, even if the basement's finished, even if it has a bedroom and a bathroom, basement does not count as living square footage. Does not count the unheated attic. Does not count a three-season room, the kind of room that you add onto the back, use it in the spring, the summer, and the fall, but it's not heated. That shouldn't count as part of your living square footage. Attached garage does not count. Two-story foyer. That's the kind of room where you got a two-story house. You walk in, the foyer often is large, maybe 10 feet by 15 feet. You look up, you don't see a ceiling like this one that is 10 feet from the floor. What you see is a ceiling that's maybe 15 or 20 feet from the floor. Basically, it's the inside of your roof, right? So you're going upstairs. Right here on the main floor, you've got living space. On the second floor area, it's empty. There is no living space. But from the outside, the assessor might have thought it was living space. So he counted 150 extra square feet of living space when he really shouldn't have. And if, by chance, you've got a two-story living room or family room, the error can be much larger because, of course, those are much larger rooms. So 2-story foyer does not count. Also, if you have a bi-level style home, the kind where you walk in and then you go down like 5 steps and you're in what's called a lower level family room. The windows are maybe chest high, you're below grade. That does not count as living square footage either. Now, I want to caution you on something though. All these things, the garage, the 3-season room, the attic, they all add value. They're just not counted as living square footage. So let me tell you how that would play out in real life. 2 houses next door to each other, built by the same builder on the same day, same materials, both 1,000 square foot of living space. One has a basement, one sitting on a concrete slab. It's likely that the one with the basement, maybe that will be assessed at $12 a square foot. The one without the basement, maybe that's assessed at $10 a square foot to reflect a greater value for the house because it has a basement. Okay. A couple other things. Okay, so that's all I want to tell you about this. So let's move. Oh no, I do want to add something. Sorry. So if you come to us with a square footage issue and we agree with you, what we can do is we can reduce your assessment. But we can't change the record of your square footage. It's with the assessor and we don't have control of his database. So what we will do is we will fill out a form, we will take your evidence, we'll take the form and the evidence, and we'll send it down to the assessor's office, all right? They're going to do one of 3 things. They're either going to agree with us and change their record, or they're going to say, we're not sure, and they're going to send a guy out to do a field check. That may take several months. And when he does the field check, he may or may not agree with our decision. Maybe there's a 3-season room, and from the outside, he's never going to go inside your house. From the outside, it looks like they got it right, so he may not get it right. Either way, he's going to come back with some kind of conclusion. The last thing they might do is look at the evidence and look at our decision and say, completely wrong, we're not even doing a field check, okay? In any case, what you need to do is follow up our decision by going to the Cook County Assessor and making sure that they change the record. Because if they don't change the record, you might be back to see us the following year for the exact same reason. You don't want a revolving door. You want to get it solved for once and for all. So you need to do that follow-up with the Cook County Assessor to get him to change his record. All right. Next, last reason for filing an appeal, vacancy. So let's say that something happens to your house, like you have a fire. And as a result of the fire, you have to move out while you're settling with the insurance company and getting contractors in to fix up the house to make it livable again. If that happens, we can grant a vacancy on the building portion of your house for the time period that you're out of the house. Once again, we need evidence. So if you had a fire, good evidence would be a fire marshal's report, or your insurance paperwork, or the contract you signed with the contractor to fix up the house. Photographs of the interior and exterior damage to the house would be good evidence. An affidavit from you telling us what happened. We woke up in the middle of the night. There was smoke. We opened the basement door. Flames were shooting out. We called the fire department. They came. They knocked down our front door. They broke every window. They filled the house with water. And now we can't live in the house anymore. Or we couldn't live in the house anymore. That would be good evidence telling us what happened. If a neighbor witnessed the fire, he could write an affidavit saying, hey, they had a fire. I noticed they moved. They didn't come back for several months. That would be good evidence. If you've got a letter from the village you live in, pulling your occupancy permit, that would be great evidence. We know you had to be out of that house as of a certain date. And then if you've got a subsequent letter saying, we're restoring your occupancy permit, now we know that you left on this date and you were able to return on this date. It makes it very easy for us. So vacancy is not limited to just if you have a fire. I know it doesn't happen here very often, but if you had a flood, that could force you out of the house. A giant tree falls on your roof and caves it in. Some drunk kid drives his van into your living room. I live up in Wheeling. We have an airport, Chicago Executive Airport. Several years ago, we got an appeal from someone who lived in Wheeling, and it was a vacancy. And they turned in a lot of evidence, a lot of the things that I mentioned. They also turned in a newspaper story that had a photograph. And the story told about what happened, but the photograph, all you had to do was look at the photograph, you knew what happened. And the photograph was a picture of a single engine plane where the tail end was sticking out of the roof of the house. So that was really good evidence for us that something significant happened, that they could live there for a while. So whatever you've got, give it to us. I'll tell you one other story about vacancy. This was my most unusual case. It was when I was an analyst, back I think in 2003 or so. We were having hearings, and by the way, we have hearings, and you can have one if you want. I'll talk about it a little bit later. But a guy came in. I was sitting at sort of a raised bench. So he walked up over to where I was, and I said, "What can I do for you?" He says, "I'm looking for a vacancy. I've been out of my house since June. Now, this was already December." And I said, "Okay, what's the story?" He says, "I've got a crack in my foundation." I said, "Sorry to hear that, but you don't normally have to vacate a home because of a crack in the foundation." So he whips out a letter from his village, and he gives it to me, and I read it, and it's a letter saying, "We've determined that your house is no longer occupiable. You may no longer live there." But it didn't give a reason. So I said, "Okay, can you expand on this for me?" He says, "Well, evidently, I've got a river flowing beneath my home. And as a result, the ground has shifted and has caused my foundation to crack." And I said, "Okay, it sounds like you've got a significant problem, and it probably affected the value of your home, but I don't understand why you can't live there anymore." And he says, "Well, the village is concerned that the ground is going to shift further, and that the gas mains are going to rupture and the house is going to explode." I said, "Okay, you got yourself a vacancy." So that was a very unusual case, but if something happens with you that forces you out of your home, come and see us and maybe we can help you out. I will tell you ahead of time, if you get a great job in Tennessee and you move and your house is vacant for 4 months while you're trying to sell it, we don't grant a vacancy for that. Or if your elderly parent moves into a assisted living home, we're not going to grant a vacancy because she's left her home vacant. Okay, it has to be something that has forced you out of the house. Okay, so that's the reasons for filing an appeal. Now let's talk about how you file the appeal. So 2 ways to file an appeal. One way is the old way. You can file an appeal on paper. And if you want to fill out a paper complaint form, we will have them for you as you leave. And if you want, you can take a complaint form home with you, fill it out, and you can mail it in to us. Or you can fill out a complaint form tonight and give it back to me or one of my staff members. We will bring it downtown. We will take it to the timestamp machine to make sure to show that you filed your appeal timely. Then we'll take it to another room where we have some people who will enter that information into a database, and your appeal will be filed. We will not send you a letter saying that you filed your appeal. You'll just have to take our word for it. That's sort of the old way. But for some of you, that might be the best way, and you can determine that on your own. The other way, though, is newer, and I think more efficient, faster, easier for anybody who has an email address and has a basic understanding of the use of a computer. So you can go to our website, which is cookcountyboardofreview.com, and that's in the booklet. And this is what the homepage looks like. So as soon as you go to our website, this is what you will see. And you're going to see File an Appeal. Click on File an Appeal. And when you click on it, it will take you to a portal which we created 3 years ago when we completely revamped the way we do things with the Board of Review. We went from a completely paper-driven system to a digital system, which is the best in the country. For, by the way, a Board of Review, which is the busiest in the entire nation. As a matter of fact, I think we're second busiest, second highest volume in all of North America for what we do, okay? But we've got a great system in place. So the portal looks like this, okay? There's 2 ways to file online. One way, I'm going to spend about 10 seconds talking about. Submit appeal as guest. There's no particular advantage to doing this, so I would suggest not doing it, but if you want to, you can. The next way is log in, register. So the login part is for anyone who's here who may have filed an appeal last year, the year before that, and registered an account. If you did that, you have an existing account, all you need is your password to get into it, and then you go in there and you file your appeal. For most of you, you've never done that, so what you're going to do is register an account. And this is great. You're going to register a permanent account for as long as you own your home. So for 10 years from now, it'll still be there, okay? You're going to go in, at the same time you're registering your account, you're filing your appeal, all right? And when you get done, you're going to click a button. I think it says enter or finish, something like that. And as soon as you do that, it'll generate an email to you which will say, thanks for filing your appeal at the Board of Review. Here's your complaint number, and that's the number that will follow your complaint, through the various review processes. I would suggest you print that off, but of course you're always going to have an email version of the message we sent you, just in case we ever tell you we didn't get your appeal. You've got the proof, okay? It's not going to happen, but just in case, it's make you feel better, right? Most of you leaving here tonight, you might think to yourself, well, I don't want to wait till the 18th. I want to make sure I get my appeal in because I don't want to miss that deadline date. But you're not going to have any evidence, right? But the great thing about registering an account is you don't need evidence when you file your appeal. You can go in there, you register your account, you file your appeal, and then you withdraw. And then you do your homework on your own, or you go to Willie Jones's office, or whatever you want to do. You can come back in a week. Use your password, go back in. By the way, you have to have an email address that you can access to file online, okay? Because we're going to maybe send you a few things, and you're going to want to read them, okay? But in any case, you can go back in a week. And remember I told you how you should download that uniformity information into that file called Board of Review Evidence? You can go back in, you can take that information and upload it into your file. And if you've got other information, if you've got a PDF of a newspaper article because a plane crashed into your house, or if you've got a spreadsheet, you've put together all the different analysis you've done on your property. You've got photographs, you've got a plat survey or an appraisal. If you've got them in a PDF format, you can upload all that stuff to us at the Board of Review, and then we will look at it. And by the way, there'll be a question about, I forgot how it's worded, but are you done submitting your evidence? If you're done, you say, yeah, I'm done, and then your appeal will go into a queue to be analyzed. If you don't click on it, you're not done, then you can come back at a later date and add more evidence. The deadline for turning in your evidence is 14 days after the deadline for filing your appeal. So the deadline for filing your appeal is the 18th, so add 14 to that, whatever it turns out to be. I don't have it figured out. Although I want to encourage everyone to turn in your evidence as soon as you can, because it makes it much easier for us if we can start analyzing the appeals sooner rather than later, because we've got deadlines to make sure that the tax bills go out on time. So if you can help us out with early evidence, that would be great. But you've got up to 14 days after the final deadline. Okay, so that's how you file your appeal. Next question is, once I've done it, who's going to review my appeal? So there are 3 commissioners that are in charge of the Board of Review. Each is elected from a separate geographic district. So 3 districts. I represent District 1. So it's this area that's the red and the pink. You can see how big it is. So we are down about here somewhere. This is where I live. So pretty good drive. In any case, each commissioner has their own staff of analysts. When your appeal comes to the Board of Review, it's going to be randomly sent to one analyst who works for one of the commissioners, not necessarily to me, even though you may be in my district. Although, of course, if you look here, District 3, part of District 3 is Brennan Township. That's Commissioner Rogers. But your appeal will go randomly to one of 3 commissioners' analysts. That analyst will look at all the evidence that you've turned in. They also have a database at their available to them, which they can look at as well. They're going to come to a conclusion, make their decision, type it up on the computer, press a button, and then your appeal will go into a queue waiting for another analyst who works for a different commission. Every appeal is reviewed by 3 analysts, 1 analyst for each commissioner. In order to get a reduction, 2 of the 3 analysts have to agree that a reduction is warranted. So that's the process for looking at your appeal. Last question, you've gone through the process. Several months from now, you get a letter in the mail that gives you our decision. Let's say that you get either a no change, which means no reduction, or you get a reduction, but you think you should have gotten a bigger reduction. Do you have any other options for filing further appeals? The answer is yes. You have two mutually exclusive options. You choose one of the two. The first option is filing an appeal at the Circuit Court of Cook County. Now, a couple things to tell you about that. If you're not familiar with navigating the court system, you may feel the need to hire an attorney. There also may be court costs, and the Circuit Court of Cook County is backed up 4 years on their property tax appeal decisions. But if you want to try them, that's your prerogative. The other option is a state agency. Keep in mind, I'm the county, but you can go to a state agency called the Property Tax Appeal Board, PTAB for short. Okay, a few things to know about them. First of all, I think they're pretty fair to average property owners. In order to appeal to PTAB, you must first have filed an appeal at the Board of Review. If you skipped us, they won't accept your appeal. So my suggestion is, if there's anybody here who has experience in my office and has filed 10 appeals and never got a reduction, and you hate us because we're horrible, file your appeal to preserve your right to go further to PTAB, okay? You don't even have to turn in any evidence. And by the way, I forgot to mention, if you don't turn in any evidence to us, our analysts are automatically instructed to do a lack of uniformity analysis. So even if you don't turn in evidence, there is a potential that we can determine that there is a lack of uniformity and we can still grant a reduction, okay? So back to this. So file an appeal first with us in order to later file with PTAB. They don't charge a fee. You're not required to hire an attorney. If you want a hearing with them, you can have one, although most people choose to just do it on the evidence. Information about PTAB will be on the letter you get from the Board of Review. And you can access more information by going to their website online. In order to file with PTAB, you must file within 30 days of the date on the letter you get from the Board of Review informing you of our decision. If you wait more than 30 days, they may not take your appeal, so I would encourage you to file that appeal within 30 days. What else do I want to tell you about these guys? I guess that's about it. So that is my presentation, folks. There's a couple other things I just want to mention. I created a new website about a month and a half, 2 months ago. Because I couldn't think of a name, I just named it after myself. So it's danpatlak.com. I want to encourage you to check it out. We're actually still building it. It's not really done, but it's available. And I've got actually some videos on there answering some basic questions of how do I file an appeal, stuff like that. We've also got links to some other good websites and some other data. So check it out now. Check it out 6 months from now. I think you'll get some good information from it. And now, if you have questions, happy to answer them. Yes, sir, right to that.
What's the bracket for the age and the square footage?
What do you mean the bracket for the
12,000 square feet. Can you search between 800 square feet and 1,200 and 10 years on the age?
Well,
like an appraiser would do.
Yeah, I mean, there's classifications of property. So, for instance, class 202 is 1,000 square feet less. So you got to stay, within that classification. So you wouldn't want to go higher, but you could go lower.
As long as you stay in the classification, if you come up with a 900 square foot house, it's still acceptable.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, the closer the better. But by the way, Lucas is reminding me, before you leave, we gave everybody a survey. Really appreciate if you fill out the survey because it helps us figure out if we're doing a good job. So just before you leave, give it to one of us. Yes, right there.
Through your office, could we file a certificate of error?
If you want to file a certificate of error, you do it through the Cook County Assessor. All certificates of error originate at the Cook County Assessor. And by the way, remember I mentioned earlier that if you have an error in your square footage, if we agree with you and we grant the reduction on your assessment, and then if the assessor agrees with you, if that error was in place going back several years, the assessor will allow you to file a certificate of error and get a refund for the amount you paid over and above the amount you should have paid, and you only have the correct square footage going back several years. So you could file a C of E for each of those years and get a refund. Yes, sir.
Earlier you mentioned about condos.
Yeah.
Those were a little bit easier, you said?
Yeah, with condos, we really don't need you to turn in any evidence. You can if you want to. But all we're really looking at is sales data within the condominium complex. And we're taking that sales data and help using that to help us determine the value of the building. Once we've determined the value of the building, we take the percentage of ownership of a particular unit or units that are being appealed, and we apply that percentage of ownership to the total value to come up with the value for that unit. So that's the basic way we do it. Yes, sir?
I filed last year in the field and I got a reduction. Now that's good for the next 2 years, am I correct?
It should be, yeah.
Now, does that mean my taxes are gonna stay the same, or?
Okay, so the question is, I filed an appeal last year, I got a reduction. Is that good for the next 3 years? The answer is yes. But the next question is, does that mean my taxes will stay the same? No, it definitely doesn't mean that. It does mean that your taxes will be lower than they otherwise would have been as you knock out the reduction. But remember, your taxes go to local taxing district, elementary school, high school, community college, village, library, park district, township, water reclamation district, county, fire protection district if you live in one. They all do a levy every year. The levy is their request for money. Usually their levy is more from one year to the next. So if everybody's asking for more and you're still the same taxpayer paying and so are all your neighbors, you're gonna end up paying more. So the answer is your taxes can go up. Yes?
Is it worth filing if there's a senior exemption on the property?
I'm sorry.
Is it worth filing if there's a senior freeze exemption on the property?
Okay, so the question is about the senior freeze and should I is it worth filing? I guess the answer is it depends how low the assessment is frozen. And what the senior freeze does, it really freezes the equalized assessed value. So a lot of times it's so low already that even if we gave a reduction, it wouldn't go that low. So it wouldn't really do you any good. But maybe you froze it last year for the first time, and you're over assessed and we can get it below that, then it would be worth doing. And then you apply for the freeze again, you get it down to that lower level. So
okay, and online it says that online filing has closed. Is that not true?
Maybe it's closed for the assessor's office because they're done, but for border review, it's certainly open. We're open until September 18th for Bremen. Are you from Bremen Township?
Yes.
Yeah, it's open until September 18th.
Okay, because it says online filing for border review has not closed.
From Bremen Township?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it does. On the assessor's office, it says it's closed. On the board, it says it's open, so.
Okay.
Yeah, your page says border review. Let me look at it later because that would be a big surprise to me.
Well, it's on the Bremen Township website, so maybe that's why.
Okay. Yeah. Don't go by what they put down.
Okay.
They must have made a mistake. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband turned 65 December 10th. And do I file a senior citizen exemption? Do I get credit for this whole year?
He turned December 10th
Of this year. He turned 65.
2018, but we're not we haven't gotten to December 10th yet.
Well, that's what I'm asking. If when they come out with the appeals for next year, can I file?
Okay, so
exemption
your
for
husband
next year?
turned 65 on December 10th, 2017.
18. He will this year. He will
Oh,
turn.
he is going to. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
yeah,
Okay.
next year.
All right.
Next
So-
year, can I file a senior citizen exemption and get credit for this year?
Yeah, okay, so he turned 65 December of 2018. Most people the assessor wants people to file for their exemptions usually in January or so, okay? So file in January, and then when the second installment 2018 bill comes out, right around July 1st, then that exemption will count for your tax year 2018. So the answer is yes. Yes, sir.
Are you going to property reclassified from a two-flat to a single residency?
You can actually, that's one thing the border review can do. We can change classification, but you have to give us evidence that it's classified incorrectly. The only thing is, sometimes we will reclassify and it'll stick for that year, but then if you don't get the assessor to go along with it, he may put it back, okay? So we can do it, but I can only promise you that it'll last for a year. So ultimately, you gotta do it for the Cook County assessment.
What do you consider?
Like if we take a picture of the stairs where there used to be a wall.
Give us all the information you can. I mean, I don't know what you want it classified to or from.
Single residence from a two-flat.
It was a two-flat for the first 30 years we lived there. My parents moved in, my mother died. We opened it up so it would be good.
I mean, talk to one of my analysts, but you gotta give us all the information you can.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
We filed for a reduction and got a reduction and re-appealed. And then we were told that they had done another analysis and nothing was going to change after that.
You were told that by who?
By the appeal board. I think it's the township.
Okay, the township doesn't make any determination at all.
Okay, then it's from the assessor's office.
Okay, so that's what the assessor said. Now you can appeal to my office, the Board of Review.
So that's a re-review?
It's not a re-review, it's a brand new appeal that you file at my office. We're not looking at what the assessor did.
Okay.